Welcome to Busting Roadblocks, the podcast where we break down the biggest roadblocks in business and help you clear a path to success. I'm Charteris, your host, and the founder of JC Consultancy, where we help businesses remove barriers and unlock their full potential. We get to hear from Liz Wilson, who has recognised her bookkeeping start makes her an expert at keeping micro and small businesses on task, identifying issues and getting in control. I met Liz in a business group where I've seen her find her niche and thrive. Now, with a career focused on support roles that make a business function, I saw, Liz, you also have a passion for the environmental and social governance. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you for that warm intro, Janet, and thank you for having me. I'll say that I've spent most of my working life having people say to me, I've just booked you in for this training. I've just volunteered you for this secondment and I've just put you forward for this project. Look, at the time, it just totally felt like, oh, hang on, I've drawn the short straw again. But what it actually did and what it's done for me is it's helped me build a really solid set of generalist skills. Yeah. You get to see how the sausage is made behind the scenes and how different things affect different areas of the business.
So I know your work experience centres around the back office admin roles. Now, these roles, they're often overlooked, but I always say that's where the magic happens, because you ask something and it just seems to appear. They bridge the gap between what management have decided and actually how it affects the front line, right? Because it's not always let's do. It's like, okay, well, that affects 18 parts of the business and there's a lot of impact to this decision. Can you set the scene for us? Where are we and who are we dealing with?
I do believe that a lot of people think some things happen magically. But I think the first time I really had the experience of seeing a major change be implemented in a business, I got to see it from the top of the ladder right down to how it was going to work in real life, day-to-day operations, was for a major fleet management change in a company.
Yeah.
So you're trying to meet you've got the topper end of town saying we need to have certain things in place for compliance to keep operating licenses and whatnot. And then you have the guys on the ground who are actually implementing all of this stuff and the overwhelm and the concerns that come up over that.
Yeah, so I'm assuming this was a big strategic change and it was thought of as being maybe a cost saving, an efficiency?
There was a major incident happen within the company.
Ooh, okay.
And It really did warrant a major change to the fleet management.
Yeah.
Just to keep them compliant moving forward. It wasn't that they weren't compliant. It was more along the lines of just addressing some things and putting some things into place to be able to keep that compliance moving forward. I, lucky enough, was voluntold again.
Love it.
So picture a corporate sort of mini financy, operationally sort of person who dressed in high heels and everything, who's now sitting in a heavy vehicle workshop in high vis and steel caps. So
right.
Big change for me.
Yeah.
But most comfortable pair of shoes I've ever worn and haven't been able to replicate them since. So obviously when the major incident happened, the business knew that there was going to be some changes made.
And were we talking, what kind of changes are we talking? Are we talking people changes?
It was a major change across the whole business for the between 3,000 and 4,000 heavy vehicles, light vehicles, and plant and equipment. Wow. So you're looking at quite a few pieces of assets that have to be maintained, and there was outreaching things from that as well. But I'm just going to focus on the the actual plant and equipment and vehicle side.
So we've got a big process implementation that's going to take place, and it's going to hit, well, you've said like 3,000 to 4,000 different, I'm guessing people even, really, right? Because each piece of equipment has a person kind of associated with it. And that's a huge roadblock, because it's not just that you've got a process that you've got to implement, you've got to get all those people on board. So is the main roadblock the system, or is the main roadblock the people, or is it the combination?
I was lucky enough when the implementation happened and being chosen as part of that team, we were given some intensive training on why it was happening, what was the administration around it, and the compliance requirements that were needed. So, I did numerous training and workshops around the country to understand that, and then to take that back to the workshop I was working in and help implement that with them. So yes, set up with all the right tools of the trade. It was the mindset of the people that had to actually put this stuff into play day to day. That was
the biggest challenge. Yeah. And that's often the case, right? Because usually when you look at the system, it makes sense, but you're changing behavior, and that's the hard bit. And particularly because you've said the behavior was already compliant, it's like, well, why are we changing? And obviously you've got a key trigger, which is the incident. But I'm sure you, particularly when you're dealing with plant and equipment, I know I've worked in a lot of factories. I know the mindset can be, we've done it this way always. Why do we have to change? Yeah. How did you find a path out of this? How did you, after being voluntold, it sounds like they've set you up with some really good training, but you still have to implement it.
Yeah. And look, coming also from not knowing, the only thing I knew about the mechanical workings of any machinery was putting fuel in my car.
Right.
So that was my sole knowledge of the mechanics of a vehicle. So I think the main thing was to help change mindset.
Yeah.
And to help communicate why the changes were happening.
Yeah, great.
The workshop had a team that had been working together for 15 plus years, and that included, someone who'd been there 30 years, someone who'd been there 20 years. There was a lot of long-serving staff members who, as you said, have always done things this way.
Yeah.
And why are we changing? But look, there was two main concerns that they had. Mm-hmm. One of them was around the legal ramifications of their qualifications, and they were sort of feeling a little bit like, oh, is the company going to hang me out to dry? What's going to happen to me? And so, look, in that case, it wasn't a case at all, but obviously as humans, that's one of the first places that you might go to. Yeah. Being able to discuss that with them and get them to understand that, no, it's okay. Like, this is in place for you just as much as it is for the company, so that, we can still have our operating license and we can still come to work every day. And the other thing which was a concern was, okay, we're going to have to do all of these extra bit of admin and extra steps in what's already a busy day. So what resources are you going to give us to help us get this done? Yeah. So they were the two main things to address at the time.
And how did you go about that? Because they're quite different. Well, they're both relatively emotional, aren't they? One of them's that I might not have a job, and the other one's that now you've given me a job that requires me to do more for the same amount of money.
So it was after there was initial pushback, and it took a couple of times for me to sort of pushing back myself to sort of go, hang on a minute, this is not getting anywhere. Let's really hone in on what the major issues are. And you're talking to tradesmen, technically trained people, and I'm a person who's just stepped in that knows nothing about what they technically do in their jobs. To them, I'm a person with a clipboard. I think the main thing that helped me was to turn it back to them so they had a bit of control, and that is telling them this is the outcome we need. This is what we need to do at the end of the day. This is what we have to do. This is our compliance. This is the line in the sand. This is the immovable stone that we have to meet. How we get to that is within our control. So it was a case of going, guys, let's give it a go. Let's look for where it's a bit clunky. Let's look for where, hey, that's really great, that's working. And look for, oh, that's not going to work, but here's a solution. So getting them into that mindset, and also getting their feedback and pulling their feedback up the chain to the heads that make the decisions, and then getting that back so changes were made that was around that feedback. And that, there was some feedback around, well, hang on, you've over-engineered some stuff. Yeah, we're spending a little bit too much more on labor and consumables, and we don't really need to. And things like that. So when they started to see changes were being made from their feedback, it gets people's buy-in. It gets them sort of going, oh, hang on, we're not just, the workshop out the back that no one really cares about. We're being listened to.
Yeah. So broadly, it's enabling the team and sharing the goal with them and getting them to become part of the solution.
Definitely.
Being adaptable, continually learning and adjusting. And, they say if they build it, they'll implement it. And that's often with processes. You can force it on people, or you can go, you guys be part of shaping it, and then you own it, right?
Yeah.
So I guess your role was key in identifying that big gap between the big picture decision makers and the people who did the work and finding a way to bridge it. Has this helped in your business, or how you've helped implement similar or even slightly different things with other clients?
Yeah, I think, look, and I guess it's something that I've learned being on this business owner's journey as well. And that is, there's no one set checklist on how to run your business.
Nope.
And when you come out of corporate, you like all the nice and shiny, you've got to have all of this stuff. And then it's a case of, well, hang on, do I? This doesn't really fit into my business. It's why I like working with this like micro and small business, because they've got this opportunity to build processes within their business that everyone uses. It's not just a lonely little process or policy or whatever you want to call it, sitting on a shelf by itself gathering dust. It's something that it's a living part of the business. Mm-hmm. And it's also open to improvement, and it's also open to scale with the business and things like that. So it's around going, you've got through Australia, you've got your ATO, mm-hmm. You've got your regulatory staff, your legislative staff. That's your immovable object. That's what your outcome is. That's what you've got to meet. But how you do that is totally in your control.
Yeah.
And I think also including your team, whether that's 2 people or 5 people, in making those decisions and putting those into place, you're never going to have a problem with anyone following the process.
So we've got this group together. We've got them part of the solution. I'm pretty sure I know how it ends up. However, was there any bit in there, because, I love imperfect stories, is there any real nitty bit that you were like, that was my key other lesson, other than engaging and getting them part of the process? Is there an element of influence in here that has taught you about too?
Yeah, there was a lot of extra hours. I mean, for me personally, when you start with the morning shift and you finish with the afternoon shift, that's a big day. So the other thing was there was change to staff. One guy left the team. So there was that unsettling sort of like, oh my God, are we ever going to get collaboration over this? And there'd be days where it's like, oh, wow, this is working. And then the next day, it's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And it's probably because they've
gone
off and had a conversation and dug themselves into a hole and gone, no, we don't want this anymore. Yeah. And I think that finding those key resistors in there and figuring out how to influence them is some of the hardest bits to do it. Like I found anyway, you need to kind of find them, and either you need to somehow have a chat to them and say, hey, you're swimming against the tide here, or how do I get you on board? Because once I've got you, all of these guys will follow.
Yeah. I had with the mechanic that had been there the 30 plus years, I had a conversation with him that had a lot of yeah, but, and just adding on to, like, when you answered a question, oh yeah, but what if this happens? What if that happens? And it really came down to, like I think it said before, let's just give it a go.
Yeah.
Let's give it a go, and let's see how it works. Let's see if we need extra resources. Let's see if this is something that can work in day-to-day reality. And because I said at the end of the day, I'd like us to have an operating license because I'd like a job and come to work every day. And it does come down to, you've got to say, mate, this is how it's happening now.
Yeah.
And I'd really like your input coming from your experience, and I'd really like to harness that to make sure that, we can make this work.
Awesome. So how did it turn out?
Yeah, it became the day-to-day. I mean, it was a lot because it ricocheted out into different areas of the business as well, but it just became, this is how we operate now. This is how we work. So anyone new coming in, they just saw it as, this is what we do here.
Yeah, so with all that effort. And then you turn around a year later and you're like, we've always done it this way now, or it feels that way. Well, I think that's an excellent real life example of how process change becomes kind of a clear people management and implementation roadblock, and then it needs a different approach, and it can't just happen here. It's got to happen all the way through.
Yeah, I think, a lot of people who work in like the bigger corporate businesses do have that feeling that, the decisions are being made just as a tick and flick exercise, but being part of the whole experience and understanding, no, it wasn't all about ticking and flicking. It was about keeping us all happily employed.
Yeah, implementation is where the fun stuff happens, which is why I love it too. Now, as I said at the start, you've really figured out how to utilize your experience and create an amazing business about taking chaos out of micro and small businesses. Can you tell our audience how to get hold of you and your business right now and a little bit about it?
DM me on LinkedIn, check out my website.
And what's your key thing that you love to do?
I think anyone that is brave enough to step out with a passion, an idea, a service, a product, they get out there and then they go, hang on, what's all this other stuff I've got to do? That delivering for their clients and their customers is like, it's a no-brainer. They can do that. I just love letting people like that have an opportunity to just keep their business sustainable by helping them. It's not big implementations of stuff. It's little bits and pieces.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Gritty that makes the work happen.
Yeah.
The salesperson should be out selling, not filling in the export form.
Yeah.
Totally.
Where the people go, where do I keep all of these important documents? What do I do with these? How does everyone find them? How do you create a back office that's collaborative and that people can see and people can use and it remains consistent?
And we'll add your contact details to the podcast description in the episode. Thank you for your time and sharing your experience with us, Liz. If you find this podcast valuable, make sure you subscribe and share it with your network. And if you have a business challenge you'd like me to cover, reach out to me on LinkedIn or at jcconsultancy.co. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What roadblocks are you facing?